I believe when I was asked how I felt about Musical Con in 2022, so the first year it ever happened, I said, and I quote, I went for free and I still felt ripped off. So I guess it's time to find out whether Musical Con 2024 managed to redeem itself or not in my eyes. Hello, you lovely lot, and welcome back to my stagey channel here on YouTube. If you've never seen my face before, my name is Flora. If you've seen it before, you already knew that. And if you couldn't guess by the title of the video, we are, of course, going to be discussing my thoughts and feelings of Musical Con 2024. Now, I will caveat this really early on by saying that I don't think this is really going to be a review in the same way I might review a piece of theatre, as it's not really a comparable event, but it does fall under the umbrella of theatre events that happen in London, and as such, I want to talk about it, as this was the third year of the event, my third year going, and I have a lot of thoughts and feelings. Now, I know a lot of what I'm about to say in this video isn't maybe going to be seen as like happy and nice and positive, but I really do hope this video reaches the creators of Musical Con and they kind of take my critiques on board, because I do think Musical Con has significant potential moving forwards, and I'm not sharing my more negative experiences of the weekend out of spite. Perhaps consider it a little bit more like constructive criticism than complaints. As someone who regularly attends conventions outside of Musical Con, I really do hope the creators see this and take some of what I have to say on board, because when I am highlighting areas maybe in a more negative light, I am also going to try and do my best to offer solutions. And whilst I'm by no means saying that I can take Musical Con and turn it into a flawless event, I do feel like, as someone who has gone to many conventions, I have insight into this beyond just like the musical theatre side of things that may help the event moving forwards. As you can probably guess by my rambling, I have a lot of thoughts and feelings about Musical Con 2024 that I really want to share with you guys. But if you weren't someone who was able to attend this year, I did try and vlog some of my day. I was going to give you guys a day 1 and a day 2 vlog, but she got distracted, what can I say? But hopefully the little clips I did manage to film kind of give you a sense of what the experience was like walking around the convention space and bring you up to speed with what the vibes of the event were, so that you have a little bit of an understanding before I dive into everything else I'm going to talk about. So I'm going to throw you back to Flora, who was at Musical Con, for a cheeky little vlog before we get back to discussing my full thoughts and feelings. Oh, and if you don't care about the vlog, which rude, you can skip ahead. I've left the timestamp down below that you can jump to, so that you can just purely hear the review element of this video and not the vlog. Now it's over to past Flora with the Musical Con report.
Okay, so I'm not sure what you're going to be able to hear because it is very loud, but I have made it to Musical Con nice and early. I've got my programme under my arm, and everyone, as you can see behind me, is very excited to be here. We've got House of Holbein going. Yeah, I'll pick you up when it's a bit quieter. All right, it's a little bit quieter now because the loud music that was playing has stopped. I can see the West End Musical Choir getting ready to start to keep us entertained whilst we are in the line. I can say it is already incredibly hot in here, I'm not gonna lie. I knew this about the XL, but there's a lot of other events going on today as well. So we will see how it goes. I've got a lot of water with me, and I'm also getting a lot of looks, which is fair enough. That's kind of part of the gig with vlogging. But it's going to be a long day here, so I'm just going to pace myself, and then hopefully it'll be time to take you inside the venue. Okay, so Musical Con has been open for about 2 hours now. As you can probably hear from what my microphone is picking up, it is very loud. But with the main stage behind me, I thought I would show you guys all of the fun things that are happening around here now. Probably most exciting is going to be the Cameron McIntosh booth behind me, that if I can navigate myself there, you will see I end up with a lovely elephant behind me. So if I turn you around, I'll show you off what we've got going on here. We've obviously got some gorgeous Phantom of the Opera costumes and moments over here. I know my brother will be very excited to check that out tomorrow. We've also got props from Mary Poppins, as well as the cute little green dog, some costumes as well. As you can see, there's a lot going on and it is very popular. And then on my other side, we have Nymax, who have brought with them a bunch of really fun photo ops. We've got the Why Am I So Single sofa and popcorn bucket bowl. We have a Jamie, I think everyone's talking about Jamie mirror. I know they've also got some Six the Musical stuff. They've got their merch booth with them here. And then here in Theatreland, it's probably the busiest section, to say the least. We've got some lovely cosplays as we go past. There's a lot of Starlight Express, which I'm loving, but here is basically all of the small businesses and shops as we go past. Yes, I have done some shopping. Yes, my bank account is significantly lighter, but I think these booths are amazing. Mixed in between, we also have some stage schools, dance wear, performance things.
Lots of lovely stuff. Okay, I've stepped inside the Karen McIntosh booth here, and I say booth, it's really a whole area to show off some of the amazing things they've got. We've got sketches and some of the costumes from Hamilton right here. I'm going to talk louder to be heard over the loud music before we move on to have a look at other things. We have other parts of set models here, including Les Mis. Oh no, there's a bit of Phantom as well. I was going to say all Les Mis, but that's wrong. Here are some of the original rubber silicone molds they used back in the 1980s. Look how gorgeous these are. I think they are absolutely fantastic and really shows you how much detail they're putting into these set models before the set is ever even built. Now, I believe my brother will probably come and correct me about all of this tomorrow, as this is literally their job. But here is a 1/50th scale selection white card model. Now, the white card model is what will come before all of this with the paint and the detail. And as you can see, they are still incredibly detailed, and I think they're absolutely lovely. This one here is for Hamilton, and I think it is gorgeous. Moving on, you might have been wondering what all of this is in the background. This is a Mary Poppins photo op. This happens kind of in the equivalent of the animated scene from the movie. They've got props people can hang out with. It's so fun and cute. What I'm really loving about this Cameron McIntosh booth is just all of the behind the scenes details it is giving you. Here is some of the costuming and makeup that they have to follow for Les Mis, as well as gorgeous wigs. I believe these are from Mary Poppins and Les Mis as well. You've also got a crown back here. Look at that glitter. It's gorgeous. And you can see a video of them applying wigs here up the top. I really love that they're giving us such a kind of behind the scenes and up close look at how some of these processes sort of happen and take place. I keep getting drawn back to this crown. It is gorgeous. That is, of course, King George's crown and his wig there from Hamilton the musical. But I feel like this can give you a really good sense of just what the wigs department are up to behind the scenes at a musical, a group of people that is so rarely seen. I know I mentioned Mary Poppins earlier, but here we are, two of the costumes. We have Mary and Bert, as well as these gorgeous sketches all along here, which can really show you how an outfit might start out versus what it looks like when it's been built for stage. And these costumes are so gorgeous. This is one of my favorite things of MusicalCon. We have more Mary Poppins stuff over here. It's absolutely fantastic. Welcome back from the vlog, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. It's a little bit rambly, I know, but I hope it gave you a bit of an understanding as to what the vibes were like this weekend at MusicalCon 2024. So I hope you're ready for me to share every thought and feeling on the matter, and boy, is there a lot for us to get into. But in case the vlog wasn't enough for you guys to get an understanding of what MusicalCon was like, or perhaps you were one of the few people who skipped it, I'm going to give you a little bit more context on the event, just so everyone is on the same page and we can understand where my review is coming from. Before giving you my full review, I would like to be transparent and provide some extra context around the event of MusicalCon. This is primarily to help you guys sort of frame the way in which you're watching me talk about this event and can form your own opinions based on what I then go on to describe, but also just to provide you guys with a bit of a background on the event itself, how it came to be, and sort of how it's marketed, which will hopefully, as with everything else I have done up until this point, help my review make more sense. Even though I know I said it wasn't a review, but I don't really have another word for it other than Flora's thoughts and feelings on a certain topic, which isn't nearly as catchy or quick to say as review. So we're going to go with review, but it's not going to be a traditional review like I said earlier, and I'm aware I'm rambling, but let's continue. So, MusicalCon is a relatively new event that takes place here in London. It started in 2022, so this is its third year of operating. It takes place at the XL Centre in London, which if you are a convention goer based in the UK, you will know it well. I have been to many Comic-Cons, and more recently, outside of MusicalCon, I had the privilege of attending Star Wars Celebration there. So MusicalCon takes place in a convention space, not just in some random venue that they found, lying around. It's also marketed as the world's largest musical theatre convention. Like, I don't know how true that statement is. Like, I don't know how it compares to something like Broadway Con, which is probably the only equivalent, shall we say, in the world, but we're gonna roll with it. The event was set up by Chris Stewart and Shanae Holmes, who some of you might recognize from events such as the West End Brunch, as well as West End musical Halloween. Shanae Holmes is also very well known for roles in shows like Miss Saigon and more recently Oliver, in which she plays Nancy. All across their branding for this event, it is very clear that they hope this event creates a space for musical theatre fans to get up close and personal with the stars of the West End and some of their favourite musicals, as well as basically being a place where our love for musical theatre can be celebrated collectively all under one roof. Which I think is so cute, like, which I genuinely think is actually adorable. Like, what a good reason to want to do something. But I don't think you guys care about the how and why MusicalCon came to be. And to start this review, we're going to need to buy our tickets for MusicalCon. So let's discuss how you get yourself through the door. Now, MusicalCon has a variety of tickets on offer, and these tickets get you different things throughout the weekend. A single day pass this year, so for 2024, would cost you £59, with a weekend ticket being £89. And these were both general admission tickets, meaning they got you through the door and got you nothing else. The next tier up from that is going to be what they called a priority ticket. Now, this would get you access to both days of the event, as well as priority to booking things like your workshops and your stage door experiences. This priority booking basically gave you early access to the booking system for the workshops and stage doors, which supposedly would give you a better chance of scoring the more sought after meet and greets and workshops over people who just had a general admission ticket, who would have to wait till a later date for their workshop slots to be released. And this priority ticket would set you back £109. But hold on, there is a ticket tier above priority, and that would be VIP. The VIP tickets were the top of the range tickets. It got you access to both days of the event. It also got you access to a VIP line, which you stood in prior to entering the convention, which was sold as shorter than obviously the general admission line was. It also, like the priority ticket, got you access to early booking for workshop and stage door experiences. Once in the event, there was also a VIP lounge and viewing area, although I use the term lounge very loosely. And you also got a tote bag, t-shirt and pin. All for the grand total of, and drum roll please, £219. And what I will say is that yes, all of these tickets got you through the doors and into the event space, but once you were in the event, the tickets gave you vastly different experiences. And you might be thinking, Flora, some of those ticket prices maybe don't sound too bad. I'm going to give you more context because I love context. This year's ticket prices were an increase on last year's ticket prices and definitely an increase on the 2022 ticket prices. I don't know why I said 2022. In the first year this event ran, a single day ticket would set you back £29, with the whole weekend costing £56. So yes, in the first year MusicalCon ran, you could do the whole weekend for cheaper than you could do a single day this year. This means that as of 2024, the ticket price has risen by 58.92. I know we're getting specific with the math. 58.92%, guys. That is a significant jump in ticket price. And as we'll explore with all the things I'm about to discuss in this video, I don't think there has been a 58.92% increase in the quality of what's on offer or the quantity of what's on offer. That feels a bit shady of me to say, but also, I'm going to speak my truth. I genuinely don't think that there has been enough of an increase in this event in terms of what's on offer and the quality of what's on offer to justify that ticket price hike, but there you are. And to be perfectly transparent with you, I don't even know why I'm moaning about the price of tickets. I was gifted my tickets by MusicalCon themselves. They invited me along in exchange for this review. They may realise in future that they don't want to invite me back as a result of what I want to say here, but I think that says more about them. This is so shady. I can't keep doing this. And I didn't know this at the time, but my gifted tickets were in fact VIP tickets. This meant that I got to take advantage of everything that the VIP ticket holders got to take advantage of, such as their shortened line and the VIP viewing area for the main stage. I also got the t-shirt, tote bag and pin, but I didn't pay £219 for it. And I think that is something that I was very conscious of when writing this review, and also something I was incredibly conscious of at the time. And so I just wanted to, and so I didn't want to hide the fact that I had been gifted these tickets from you guys, because I do think it's very important for me to be transparent, particularly with everything I am about to say and share on the matter. But I feel like I've given you enough context. If you're still confused, I can't really help you any further. But with everyone hopefully brought up to speed with MusicalCon, the cost of the event, a little bit of its history and what I saw and did because of my little vlog, which you should have watched, I feel like it's safe to say we're all on the same page before I dive into this review. So as always, we're going to start with the good, but hold up. It's no longer the good, it's the highlights. We've rebranded. So we're going to start as we always do with the highlights. And if you're So we're going to start, as we always do, with the highlights. Now, if you haven't watched my Redlands video, which shame on you if you haven't, because it's a really good video, you're probably thinking to yourself, Flora, you've never used highlights before. What do you mean, as we always do? I've rebranded, okay? No more is the good, the bad, and the ugly format, because I personally believe it led to my videos having a more negative skew. As such, we've rebranded to do highlights and lowlights, as I feel like it's a much more even weighting and a slightly less gloom and doom way of structuring my reviews. So let's get into the highlights. The biggest highlight for me is definitely going to be the Cameron Mackintosh booth. Now, that's what I showed you a lot of in the vlog earlier. I loved having the opportunity to see things like costumes from Hamilton and Mary Poppins up close, as well as things like set models, which are so gorgeous and so detailed, and I find fascinating. And maybe that's just me as a theatre nerd, but I think they're great. There was also a display on wigs and things like that, and these are things that you very rarely get to see so up close, and so for that, I really did enjoy this booth. I could have used a little bit more signage just to kind of know what I was looking at, or maybe a person to chat to about them and ask questions. But all in all, I do think it was probably the best setup or booth that was there. One really big thing that I loved about the Cameron Mackintosh setup was that they had a sound desk and a little stage manager desk set up. And if you know me, you know technical theatre is my jam. I've never wanted to be a performer, but if you said, Flora, would you like to come and stage manage this show for a week? I would be there in a heartbeat. I stage managed throughout high school and university. I love it. And so the fact that the Cameron Mackintosh booth had a stage manager set up where you could put headphones on and listen to cues being called whilst watching what was happening on the show via a monitor, much like a stage manager of a West End show would, was fantastic. The same with the soundboard. I think this was brilliant and something I would love to see more of at MusicalCon. Something as simple as these setups can be immensely effective in inspiring the next generation of stage managers, sound designers, special effects workers, all these people that are vital to the theatre community and keeping shows up and running. And so I have to give the Cameron Mackintosh stand a round of applause for including that. The limited space and inward sort of design or layout, shall we say, of the area, I think was a limitation. It meant bottlenecks were quite frequent and it was hard to navigate. But other than that, I think it definitely had the most on offer and to me represents what I think of when I think of what should be at a convention about musical theatre, if that makes sense. The next highlight we're going to dive into is the opening ceremony. I thought this was such a lovely way to start the day. It featured performances from the likes of Leighton Williams, Erin Caldwell, and Amy Atkinson. It was like a mini concert / variety act in which they all got up and performed various songs, and everyone in the venue seemed to enjoy it. This to me is what MusicalCon is about. This is what most people expect when they hear something like the words MusicalCon. A chance to see West End performers that you know and love singing songs on a stage in a more intimate setting, kind of like West End Live, but like I said, more intimate, more up close, more personal. And oftentimes getting to see them perform songs that are maybe outside of the repertoire of shows they've been in, really making it a unique experience. During this opening ceremony, they were also backed up by some of the most incredible young dancers. I could not find for the life of me anywhere, not in the program, no announcement, nothing, who these dancers were. So if you know, please type them up down in the comments because they were fantastic and so captivating to watch. I really loved that. But yeah, the opening ceremony was great. One drawback to the opening ceremony, it does only happen on Saturday. So if you only had Sunday tickets, you would miss out on this, which I think is such a shame, bearing in mind Sunday tickets cost the same amount as just a Saturday ticket, because I know Sunday has the closing ceremony, which is kind of the same thing, just in reverse. But yeah, I think the thing I want to highlight mostly here is that it was great because it's like an event like West End Live, but more intimate and more personal because you've paid the fee for it, right? Like West End Live is this massive free event, and as such, it's sort of like you're just ahead in a crowd. But here you could really connect with the performers on stage. And I think certainly I think of an event like MusicalCon, I expect musical performances, and that's exactly what this opening ceremony delivered on. It would be foolish of me to continue this highlight section as well without mentioning a real highlight of it for me was the people that went. Getting the chance to hang out with so many brilliant stagey people was so fun. Like all under one roof. Brilliant. From all of you lovely lot that came up to say hi, to all of the amazing small shop owners that took the time to chat with me, not only about the shows that they were passionate about, but the amazing art they were selling as well. It was just such a real treat. I think that's what I've always loved about conventions, whether it's MusicalCon, whether it's Star Wars Celebration. It's this kind of coming together of people that have a shared love for something. So be it Star Wars Celebration, where you're arguing with someone over which clone has the best armor, or MusicalCon, where you're having a debate over whether Les Mis or Miss Saigon is better. It's this ability to connect with your fellow fans of something in person, all under one roof. There's just this quite addictive energy about it where you're just surrounded by people that love the thing you love just as much as you do. I think that's so special. So whilst I don't think MusicalCon is necessarily unique, because this is an atmosphere that's created by all conventions, I do think it's worth highlighting because genuinely part of the reason, if not most of the reason, I had so much fun at MusicalCon was because of everyone else at MusicalCon and having fun with people that love theatre just as much as I do. I think that was really special and really nice. Speaking of people having fun, Shanae Holmes, there is something so awesome about watching her take to the stage at MusicalCon. Obviously, it's her baby, but her passion for this event is so palpable, be it when she's on stage interviewing fellow musical theatre performers or when she's walking around the convention chatting with people, admiring their cosplays, fangirling because someone's wearing a shirt from an obscure musical. Like, her passion is contagious. And you know when someone's just like so into something and so passionate about it, like you can't help but like join them on that. Like, that was her energy for the whole weekend. And so I just wanted to give her like a little shout out for that, because I think if she didn't have that energy throughout the whole weekend, you would definitely have noticed it. So well done, Shanae. And then the final highlight I want to kind of pinpoint in this section is definitely going to be the Stars of MusicalCon competition. This was kind of like X Factor for musical theatre performers, and it really was like a high point of my Saturday, I must say. Now, the winner of this competition gets the opportunity to take part in the Halloween or Christmas, depending on availability, concert that is also organised by the same team that organises MusicalCon, in which they'll star alongside well-known musical theatre performers, which is a fantastic prize, right? I know people auditioned beforehand. I'm not entirely sure how the audition process worked, but basically the people we got to witness on stage were like the finalists selected. And oh my God, the talent on display on that stage. Like, you're looking at me like, how are these people not booked already? They were fantastic. And I also really liked it because it meant we got the chance to hear songs that maybe weren't being performed by some of the performers that were actually at MusicalCon. We had Jesus Christ Superstar. We had Next to Normal, which, if you know me, you know I'm Alive is one of my favorite theatre songs ever. But it was so good. And the guy who won singing the song from Jesus Christ Superstar, oh my God, you could not take your eyes off him. His voice was phenomenal. So he very much deserved that win. And I wasn't expecting this to be a highlight going in. I wasn't really sure what to expect, full stop, really, when it came to it. But I loved it. And I'd honestly go and watch the Stars of MusicalCon again next year, now that I know what it is and what to expect. Another thing I really liked about the start of MusicalCon performance was it really was that chance for the fans of musicals to come together and support their fellow fans who have incredible talent, and really give these performers the chance to shine and get their name out there in a way that they might not have an opportunity to do otherwise. I do think that was really fantastic and something definitely very unique in terms of like the kind of lineup you might find at a convention. So I do appreciate that they included something like that. And honestly, good on these people for getting up and performing, because firstly, I'm tone deaf, and secondly, I've got stage fright, so you would not get me up there in 1,000 years. So that's it from me on the highlights front. I do feel like the highs of MusicalCon were very high, and I did have fun with a lot of the highs that I pointed out here. But unfortunately, where there are high highlights, there are also low lowlights. So guys, now's your chance to pause this video, grab a snack, grab a drink. Like me, you gotta stay hydrated because we've got a lot to discuss. Before I dive into the lowlights properly, however, remember to give this video a thumbs up, as well as sharing your own MusicalCon experiences down in the comments. I would love to know how you guys found this event. Oh, and remember to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any future stagey content from moi. Now, let's get into the lowlights. Okay, I know this section may at times feel like it's just a little bit negative, like a never-ending list of complaints, but that's not what I'm trying to go for. I don't want what I'm about to say to be taken that way. I really do want it to be seen more as constructive criticism, as I feel like many things I'm about to share are definitely things that would be really easy for MusicalCon to fix. In fact, I kind of offer solutions to some of them in places. So with that little disclaimer out of the way, let's see what my lowlights of MusicalCon 2024 were. This may seem like an odd lowlight to start with, but I think one of the issues I take with this event is the fact that it's MusicalCon. Like, it's such a big frustration that this event set in London, which is arguably one of the hearts of the theatre, you know, on a global scale, filled with West End stars, just so heavily focuses on musicals. I get it. Musicals are big and flashy and shiny. They're easy to market. They're easy to enjoy, you know, without booking a ticket and sitting in a seat, because you can listen to soundtracks, things like that. But so many of the West End's best shows, at least in my opinion, are plays, right? You've got Mousetrap. That is one of the longest running plays in the world, if not the longest, which has been running for over 70 years. Play That Goes Wrong as well, that's just entered its 10th year. Plays are more brilliant than I think people give them credit for. And so to see shows like this neglected from an event like this, just to me is a little disappointing and a little disheartening. I also get that the event is called Musical Con, right? So like it makes sense to a degree that it is just musicals. But I think some of the issues the event faces with regards to what it has on offer, with regards to the price of the tickets as well as the size of the venue it's trying to fill, could easily be mitigated by including some of the West End's amazing plays in its lineup and make it more of like a West End event as opposed to just musicals. Second thing in my lowlights category is definitely going to be the slogan, "This is for the fans." It's slapped across all of Musical Con's branding. It's even on the back of the t-shirt they gave me, and I just can't help but disagree. When I say it is painfully obvious that this event is organized by performers, yikes. Okay, no, maybe that was a little bit harsh of me. I could have phrased it nicer, but I mean, come on. Everything at Musical Con is about performance and performers and becoming a performer and going to stage school, which, like, great, but also I feel like it neglects the fact that there is a lot, if not a majority, of musical theatre fans that have no desire to go to stage school and try and get a role in a West End show. They're simply at Musical Con because of their love of the art for theatre. Like, most of the exhibitors there were performing arts colleges. I will say I find it very interesting that lots of the drama universities like Erdang weren't there this year, which they have been in the past. But basically this means if you're someone that's just there as a fan of musical theatre, this just means if you're someone who's there as a like generic musical theatre fan, there's kind of less for you to do than if you were 15 and potentially looking into going to a performing arts college. Right, I'm 22 at the time of filming this video. I was 22 at Musical Con 3 days, so by the time I've edited and posted this video, I will be 23. Happy birthday, me. I don't want to become a performer. I've known that since I was a kid. I've got no interest in it, right? My brother, who was my +1 to the event, doesn't want to become a performer. They're at university for theatre design, but wants nothing to do with singing and dancing on the stage. And I just feel like there are so many spaces and information that you can access as someone who wants to learn more about dancing and singing and acting professionally, that it kind of irritates me that so much of Musical Con's floor space is dedicated to the same thing. In my opinion, Musical Con should be focused less on performers, both current performers and hopeful performers, and instead shift to focus on the art of musical theatre and the shows themselves a little bit more. I also find it fascinating that there was next to no one outside of the people at the Cameron Macintosh booth there sharing information about technical theatre. There were no talks highlighting lighting or set design or stage managing or anything like that. Very little happened at Musical Con 2024 that really shone a light on the more backstage roles, all of which are so essential to bringing a musical to life. Like, I get it. No one can name the stage manager that was part of the opening company of Phantom of the Opera on the West End, right? Google it, their name is not there, okay? I'm sure someone can tell me, but I couldn't name them. But that doesn't mean they weren't a vital part of that opening company and making Phantom of the Opera the long-running success that it is. Like, musicals wouldn't happen without the amazing army of people working tirelessly behind the scenes to make the performers on stage look good. So I just find it fascinating that an event that's supposedly all about bringing musicals closer to the fans and giving us an insight into the industry, that you've just neglected. I'm not even gonna be funny, I want to say like 80% of the industry, because I feel like the performers make up such a small part of the team that goes into making a show. Bearing in mind, it is no secret that there is a shortage of people going into technical theatre at the moment. I think it would be wise for an event like Musical Con, if it does want people exhibiting about performing arts schools and things like that, to at least feature some talks and booths that showcase technical theatre and perhaps encourage and inspire a next generation of theatre technicians and have them look at a career that they might not otherwise know exists within the theatre industry. Even if these panels weren't on the main stage, like some of the cast interviews were, I definitely think they would draw a crowd. But like, all of that rant just to sort of say that I feel like Musical Con presents a very basic and somewhat ignorant of who the average musical theatre fan is. It seems to group all attendees into the category of like young, hopeful performers. And I feel like this narrow understanding of musical theatre fans ultimately narrows their scope of who the event can appeal to, because it puts people off. I feel like this narrow understanding of who musical theatre fans are narrows the scope of whom this event could appeal to. And as such, I think the overfocus of the event on like becoming a performer really turns off older fans that would otherwise just be there because they love theatre and want to learn more about theatre, if that makes sense. That's not to say Musical Con can't still involve performing arts schools, but I think to focus so heavily on the performance aspect of theatre really limits what this convention could potentially offer. 2022 definitely had a lot more talks from people like costumers and light designers and things like that, but this year there was very little of that, and I definitely missed it. As a fan with no interest of getting into a career as a performer, I want to hear set designers talk, I want to hear costumers talk, I want to hear the hair and makeup department discuss things like the challenges of designing in an old theatre and things like that, because that's interesting, at least in my opinion. But hearing different performers peddle the same advice about how to get into drama school over and over again gets really repetitive, no matter which performer's mouth it's coming from. Like, maybe that's really cynical, but I just think that's dull, right? Because ultimately they're all going to give you the same advice. Like, I'd just be intrigued to see how differently I felt about the event if I was 15 and wanted to go to drama school, you know, because I feel like there was a lot more on offer for that demographic than there was for someone like me who is just there as a fan of theatre and nothing more. Kind of continuing on with the lowlights, and I know I'm kind of getting a little bit ranty, but I've had a lot of thoughts and feelings about MusicalCon, if you couldn't tell. But continuing on with the lowlights, I definitely have to be honest and say a lot of it just felt lazy this year. Like, the NIMAX booth was literally 3 big banners of their musicals on like a lazy photo op. Like, these were definitely just tube station posters they had lying around that they pasted to some like temporary walls, and then like, oh well, we might include a little prop. Like, NIMAX operates 6 West End theatres, and you're telling me the best they could do was 3 giant posters that ultimately made for a rather crappy photo op. Come on. Disney too, right? They said, oh, we're going to be at MusicalCon. We're going to have a Hercules booth ahead of the 2025 Drury Lane run. It was literally just a photo op as well, which admittedly they'd put more effort into than the NIMAX lot. It was quite cute. You could pose and make it look like you were holding a temple up with a light up lightning bolt in the background, whilst I think Go the Distance played in the background. But because of the overall crappy lighting in the room due to having it dark because the main stage was off to one side, and then the lightning bolt illuminated in the background, no amount of editing can save those pictures, let me tell you. Similarly, it was supposed to promote the show, right? But what is there to promote when you don't even have a date at which your tickets are gonna go on sale? Like, you'd think chatting with the cast members would be informative, but all they were trying to do was flog a cheap tote bag or a water bottle. Like, no, thank you. Firstly, seen the show in Germany and they have way better merch than this. And secondly, could you not tell me something about it other than, oh, it's gonna be good? Like, yeah, no shit, I've watched it in a foreign language, I know the show's good, but why should I come and see it at the Drury Lane, right? You get what I mean? Like, lazy, okay? Like, it gave me nothing, ultimately. I learnt nothing from it. I learnt nothing from chatting with it. I got a picture that I'm going to have to try and re-edit because it looks terrible, but I don't even know when tickets are going to go on sale. It felt half-assed. Not as half-assed as the NIMAX lot, but half-assed nonetheless. And talking about half-assed, a lot of the panels were recycled. Like, they thought I wouldn't notice, but I did. I've got my 3 programs. I can compare them, right? A lot of the panels are getting recycled. And whilst they might have a slightly different lineup in terms of who's on the panel and talking, ultimately, it's still the same panel because it's still the same topic of conversation. And this, again, like if you're someone who doesn't want to go to performing arts school, if you're someone who has been to MusicalCon every year, the list of what you can see and do is slowly decreasing because, well, I did that last year. Why would I do it again this year? Like, lots of what was on offer this year just felt like the absolute bare minimum. Like, I can take a picture with the poster on the London Underground. I don't need to pay £60 to enter the Excel to do the same, right? Give me something more. Give me an exclusive about the show I can't do anywhere else. Particularly when you have the Cameron Mackintosh booth going all out, when I think it just made other things pale sort of so significantly in comparison. The next thing I'd like to discuss is the schedule of events for this event. That sounded stupid, but yes, the schedule of events for MusicalCon 2024. Maybe it's just because I'm a planner, but if you give me a schedule, I expect us all to stick to it, alright? A lot of the stuff on the main stage schedule in particular, and primarily on the Saturday, either ran significantly late or just didn't happen at all, with like no explanation or acknowledgement. They were just skipped over. Like, I would have gone and done something else if you'd given me the heads up and then come back later, but instead I've stood here for 20 minutes missing half of a panel that I was kind of interested in but chose not to go to because I was interested in what was happening on the stage, for that just to not happen. I would have preferred a heads up and an acknowledgement that something's not gone right or timings have been messed up, as opposed to just sitting around and waiting for something that's ultimately not going to happen. Similarly, I feel like the schedule could have done with making it a bit clearer, like what was just a talk and what was a musical performance. I feel like the past programs have definitely made that more obvious. No offense to MusicalCon and to the people that got on stage but didn't perform, but most people I think are there for performances. And so to advertise, say, the Mean Girls panel the same way that you advertise the Why Am I So Single discussion, when you get 2 songs from Why Am I So Single and then nothing scene from Mean Girls, you're kind of like, well, I've just stood here for 40 minutes for no reason. So even just like a little indicator in the program as to when something includes a musical performance and when stuff doesn't, I think would have been nice, because it would have allowed people, again, to more appropriately plan their time and go, okay, well, it's a panel I'm interested in, but ultimately I really just wanted to hear them sing a song, but now I know there's not going to be a musical performance from this cast, I'm going to go do something else. I think it just would have been beneficial. Like, it's just nice to have this information. Also, I feel like there was a lot of schedule conflicts. Now, I don't know how they make the schedule for MusicalCon. I don't know if it's sort of an actor availability thing or whatnot, but you've got things like the LGBTQIA in theatre panel clashing with the Why Am I So Single panel, when I feel like there's quite a big crossover between the audience, shall we say, that might want to attend. People, I feel, were very often forced to pick between things at MusicalCon that they really wanted to attend both, but couldn't because the schedule wouldn't allow it. Similarly, there was never gaps or downtime in the schedule, so you felt like you were always missing something, and I think this was maybe made worse by the fact you could hear everything going on, so it felt more like you were missing it because you could hear the musical performance on the stage whilst you were listening to a talk happening on like the smaller stage to the side, or whilst you were around browsing the shop. There wasn't ever an opportunity where you're like, okay, there's an hour's break in terms of what's happening on the main stage, I'm gonna go and shop, or that's perfect, that's exactly when I want to go and do this talk on this topic. And I feel like downtime is important in conventions, because otherwise you can sort of get trapped standing in one location because you're too afraid to move or go explore because you might miss something. And obviously I touched on the fact that you could hear everything from everywhere, and I think the layout of the convention is definitely one of its weakest points. MusicalCon happens almost entirely all in one room with two smaller areas outside for workshops, and then I do believe some of like the masterclasses happen in different locations as well, but as a general rule, if you've not paid extra to do any of that, everything happens in the same room, meaning you've got the big booming speakers from the main stage filling the whole room with noise on top of everyone talking, and then you've got smaller panels, say like the backstage stage, as well as people having meet and greet and people shopping, and so you can't really ever get away from the noise. And I do, like I said earlier, I think that contributes to this feeling that you're missing out, but also this feeling of like just general overwhelmedness. I feel like it is very uncommon for a convention to have a main stage in the same hall as everything else like that. I know it's a privilege to be able to afford more space when putting on a convention. It's not a cheap thing to do, but even things like heavy curtains around the main stage would do wonders in dampening the noise in the rest of the convention, meaning you can better hear what's going on. The flow of people also I don't think is very well thought through at MusicalCon. All of the shopping areas are kind of arranged in like squares, as opposed to most conventions which in your artist's alley area tend to have rows. So there was no like funneling of people. There was people kind of getting trapped and walking in different directions and bottlenecks here and there. So I think maybe going for rows in the future as opposed to these little square setups they had might solve some of their issues. Like, of course there's always going to be bottlenecks, but I think the layout definitely exacerbated the issue. Something as simple as bringing in a convention planner, now they might have one, I don't know, but it doesn't feel like they do. Bringing in someone who regularly attends big conventions, I think would really help them solve some of these niggles that they seem to be having, because particularly if the event starts getting more popular and busier, these are issues that are only going to become worse with time, and nipping them in the bud whilst you're still a smaller convention I think is definitely something really useful that they should maybe you know do. Because on top of the fact that it was really difficult to just move around in general, I feel like the accessibility of the event is still kind of all over the place, right? There was better accessible seating this year. They actually gave them a decent view by the main stage, but I feel like that's where it ended. There was also an accessibility queue, but some people said it was difficult to find. Now, I'm not someone who needed any access with regards to my physical ability, but as someone who is neurodivergent, I will say this event is incredibly overstimulating. It is busy, it is loud, it is really loud when there is someone belting their heart out on the main stage, and there isn't really anywhere that you can kind of go. I did learn afterwards that there's a quiet room. Didn't see it signposted anywhere, didn't know anything about it, but I've spoken to some people that used it and they said compared to last year, it was literally just a room. Last year there was fidget toys, colouring, beanbags, a place you could really go to decompress, and this year it was just like a room. And also when I was talking about bottlenecks, it was difficult navigating Theatreland and all of that for everyone, but I can just imagine that if you're trying to your wheelchair through there, or perhaps you're on crutches and people are knocking into you, that it was even more difficult to navigate. And so they really need to look into how they're doing their accessibility accessibility measures for this event, because currently it's not really up to par, shall we say. Like, it's not a neurodivergent friendly event unless you're someone who is really good at managing yourself. The event ran from 10 until 4, I believe, but obviously people were queuing up from 8. Like, you burn out so quickly because there's just noise. Oh my god. If I can get anything across to you in this video, it's how bloody loud it was. And this is someone who goes to F1 races and concerts for fun, but this was loud. I just think, like, you can't call your event accessible if it's not really. That's kind of just like what I've taken from my experience, and a few people have reached out to me and shared their thoughts and feelings on it, and I just thought I'd throw it in there because it is an issue that needs addressing. I'm just maybe not the correct person to be addressing it in depth. But what I can address in depth is the low light of what this event actually had to offer. Like I said back at the start of this video, there has been a 58% increase in ticket price since the event started, but there definitely has not been a 58% increase in what the event has to offer. But where's 2023 been in all of this, Flora? I hear you ask. Well, let's bring last year's event into this as well. Guys, you'll be so proud of me. I pulled my calculator out for this video and everything. I've been doing math. Okay, so tickets this year were 17% more expensive than they were than 2023 tickets for MusicalCon. Yet, as previously established with the jump from 2022 to 2024, there was not a percentage increase in what was on offer. In fact, there's actually a 25% decrease in the number of exhibitors this year, and of all the performances we got in 2024, 66% more of them were like stage school performances compared to last year, not like West End shows or performers. And I hate to be that person, but the numbers don't lie, guys. Honestly, to me, kind of shocking. You're going to charge me 17% more, yet offer me at a minimum 25% less than you did the year before. Make it make sense. But we're going to talk about exhibitors first. Now, this does encompass everything from small shops to shows with specific exhibits to stage schools. Now, I couldn't tell you exactly, where the 25% decrease took its biggest toll, but at least to me personally, it definitely felt like it was on the shows front. In the first year, Disney had a massive display of costumes. There was a whole ass DeLorean from Back to the Future, and Anne Juliet was there as well with costumes that you could look up close and personal, and they were also handing out free pens and postcards, and who doesn't love a free bit of stationery? 2023 had big Disney photo ops, including a genie lamp that actually smoked, which was fun. There was a whole puppetry demonstration, which I know people loved, including the Sven puppet from Frozen. There was all sorts that you could see and do in the 2 years past that just weren't there this year. As for the majority of performances now being from stage schools, I don't necessarily think this is bad with respect to the fact that I think it's an amazing opportunity for the schools and for the kids taking part. I just think when you're sold on this idea of an event being you being able to get up close and personal with some of your favorite West End shows and performers, it's like a little bit of a rip-off. Not to say these college kids aren't good, but people typically don't pay 60 quid to watch someone else's kids perform on stage when they're being sold this idea of seeing West End performers. We did get some performances from shows and West End performers. Obviously, I touched on some of them in the highlights section, but they were definitely limited, at least in my opinion, compared to years past. I also mentioned earlier that lots of panels were being repeated, which again means that if you've been to multiple musical cons, the offerings actually start to decrease over time because nothing new is being added. There was definitely as well, in my opinion, an increase in what I call fan panels, and basically this is panels run by fans. It is what it says on the tin, which is not to say fan panels are bad. In fact, some fan panels I've been to have been better than the main panels, but when you're paying £60 a day, you want to be hearing from industry professionals, not just some like schmuck with a camera. Just for a little bit of comparison, 2023 had performances from the cast of Matilda, cast reunions and performances from the likes of Newsies and Bat Out of Hell. There was even a surprise reunion of the Sheffield cast of Miss Saigon. 5 new musicals gave previews. There was also a spotlight on Dane Arlene Phillips, choreographer, and composer Claude Michel Somberg. And that literally is just to list a few of the offerings from 2023. Even then, that feels like more bang for your buck than we got in 2024. To top all of this off, the space itself just felt sparse. There was so much dead space this year that I don't remember seeing in years past. There was whole kind of empty voids where it was just people sat in the semi-darkness on their phones looking bored. Now, 2023 did see the event jump from their smaller original space into a larger space, but even still, I feel like 2023 utilized the space a lot better than they did this year. Like, if I want to sit in the dark on my phone, I can do that at home. I don't have to pay to do that. People were leaving early, in fact, because they just didn't feel like there was enough on offer for them to fill a whole day or potentially a whole weekend. I know I mentioned them earlier, but I do think we also need to talk about the workshops, masterclasses, and stage door experiences. There were loads of these on offer, really quite a lot of variety, and you could definitely fill your day with them. However, they do come at an extra cost, creating a sort of pay to play system. I've never done any of the workshops, masterclasses, or stage door experiences, and I probably won't ever do them, to be honest. I have had the opportunity to talk to several people that did take part in them, and I've definitely heard very mixed things. Some people said the masterclasses and workshops were brilliant. Everyone got the chance to try their hand and get feedback from an actual West End performer. And then other people are kind of saying that no, only 3 or 4 people got to sing and the rest of us just kind of got to stand there and listen to the feedback they were getting. The discrepancy in these experiences is definitely frustrating, particularly when it is a paid extra, because who wants to pay to watch someone else have a singing lesson? I also think the pay to play model is frustrating when you use things like the stage door experiences and workshops as part of your core marketing with this whole like get up close and personal with your favorite West End stars kind of vibe. It just feels greedy, especially when you take it back to things like the ticket options. A priority ticket gets you priority to spend more money. I'd get it if some of the workshops were free, right? Then there's an incentive. But why would I pay more to pay more? Does that make sense? Like, maybe that's just my stance on it, but that's how I've always felt about things like that. The workshops were £15 each, as far as I'm aware. Correct me if I'm wrong. I assume they were all the same price, which isn't too bad, like as a standalone fee, but it definitely adds up, right? Let's say you're a mum or a dad taking your 2 kids to Musical Con, right? Okay, you've got general admission tickets, so that's 60 quid each. For a family of 3, that's £180. Then if each of your kid wants to do 2 workshops each, shall we say, that's an additional 60 quid. So that means you've already spent a whopping total of £240, and that's before we even consider traveling down to the event, staying in London, or any of the stage door experiences. Like, that's a lot of money. Because speaking of the stage door experiences, this is where your day could really get expensive. Now, I understand the stage door experiences, if it works like other conventions, which I think it does, is where these performers are going to make the most of their money on a day. Like, they won't be paid to be at the event. The incentive is the more meet and greets you sell, the more money you get to take home, right? But as someone who's never even been fussed by like actual stage door after the theatre, the thought of paying money to effectively speak to someone for 20 seconds, have them sign something, and then snap a quick picture with them seems like, why would you spend money on that? The idea of paying a minimum of £25 to meet a person is so bizarre to me. Each performer definitely had their own price, and some of them I feel like could have been a lot more cheeky with the number they gave than others. You know, it does add up. It's not necessarily something that's super affordable for someone considering, you know, what you could buy for an equal amount of money, like at the grocery store maybe. And that's not to shame anyone that did take part in these stage door meet and greets. But when in 2022, I ended up having conversations with people like Carl Mann and Harriet Watson, just like on the convention floor, these kind of artificial moments for an additional fee, to me at least, contrast with the overall pitch of Musical Con as a way to bring fans closer to their favourite performers. Now, I will caveat this by saying that I am very aware that since 2022, a lot of musical theatre personalities have grown huge followings, and so it wouldn't necessarily be safe for them or for the convention to just go wandering around. Possibly it would cause more chaos than, you know, the convention organisers want. Hannah Lowther had a brilliant solution to this. She put on a onesie and a pig mask, and she was like, "Oh, I'm Mother Dunstock." I thought that was hilarious. I did wonder at on the day, I was like, what's going on there? Then I saw a TikTok and I was like, actually, honestly, Hannah, that's so clever. No, shout out to her for that. When we went from having these organic interactions with them back at the start to this very artificial behind a paywall style meet and greet situation now, it definitely feels different, and to me feels a bit like icky. And I know not every year at a convention is going to be, you know, 100% wow, amazing, best day ever, right? Conventions have their highs and lows. Sometimes you can get more people to agree to exhibit there than others. You know, they all have their ups and downs, but I feel like charging so much yet delivering on so little is ultimately just going to hurt your reputation as a convention and leave a bad taste in people's mouths when they ultimately don't get what they paid for. So to summarize what was a very long rant about what was on offer at Musical Con 2024, basically think of it like shrinkflation. I think it's ridiculous that you are making me pay more yet delivering less, right? You thought it only happened with your tubes of Pringles and your bags of Haribos. No, Musical Con's doing it as well. Shrinkflation. Finally, I know we're at the end, guys. We're at the end of my long list of complaints. The final thing in the Lowlights category is going to be the cosplay competition. Now, this is not a reflection on anyone that took part in the competition. This is a reflection on the competition itself, because I have issues with how it was organised and run. Now, before anyone questions my credentials on this, I would like to point out that my brother is a competitive cosplay cosplayer, and a very fucking good one at that, might I add. Not that I'm biased in any way. They've literally won awards for their craftsmanship and their skill, most recently placing second in the Crown Cosplay Championship, which is a huge deal. As such, I feel like I have learned quite a lot about cosplay simply just by living in a house with them. And so I feel like that makes me, you know, inadvertently an expert to talk on this topic in a way that I feel like a lot of other creators can't, because no other creator is cosplay adjacent, shall we say. Now, it is important to recognize that every cosplay competition across the board is definitely going to be organized differently, and they'll have varying standards and criteria that participants need to meet. But I do think MusicalCon would definitely benefit from getting a cosplayer on the judging panel or the organization committee to help better organize this competition, or like, I don't know, maybe watch a YouTube video about it, because it very much feels like what non-cosplayers feel like a cosplay competition is. Now, in preparation for this segment of the video, I actually got to speak to a lot of the people that took part in the 2024 MusicalCon cosplay competition. That's a fucking mouthful. But moving on, it seems that they all have had kind of varying experiences with it, with some people not even being considered, you know, prior to pre-judging. So all those hoping to compete on the day had to submit their costume beforehand, and they were then told to meet at a certain location at MusicalCon on the Sunday to be photographed for pre-judging. Lots of people had no issue with this. That was fine. They got their email later that day telling them whether they'd been sort of made it into the top 10 or not. But a lot of people, from what I'm hearing, never got their photo taken. They asked about it and this, that, and the other, and the kind of organizers sort of like, just come back later. That comes across as them not even being considered from the get-go, which I just think, if you're going to be snooty like that, like, at least uphold the falsehood that everyone's in with an equal chance. Uphold the facade that everyone is going to be considered equally, because otherwise, what's the point? You've wasted their time, right? But prejudging aside, I also feel like the competition itself was just really interesting to watch. No offense to Shanae, it's obviously very clear she's never judged or hosted a cosplay competition in her life. I don't expect her to. It's not something that everyone has experience in. But when you're asking your competitors questions like, how much did this cost you? Or, you know, what does this costume or character mean to you? Those are just questions you don't typically ask a cosplayer at that point in a competition, because ultimately things like budget and the emotion behind the costume are kind of irrelevant, as these questions have nothing to do with the cosplay or the construction of it. The audience also had no context for the judging criteria. All we got told were these are the top 10 finalists after pre-judging, and that was it. And as a result of this, I overheard so many conversations throughout the rest of the day of people being like, well, this costume was robbed, or this one should have won, or that one wasn't as good as this one. I'm like, that's fine. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion. But I can imagine if you took part in the competition and you were overhearing these conversations, it would have been like really disheartening. If the crowd had been made more aware of the judging criteria, I think that would maybe have alleviated part of the problem. And I think part of the problem was potentially the judging criteria. Like I say, we don't really know what it was, but if anyone from MusicalCon is watching this video, here is a quick little explanation of how a lot of cosplay competitions are run, or how I would advise you to restructure yours, shall we say. You really need to establish a judging criteria and make it known to everyone. Will it be accuracy of the costume, attention to detail, skills involved, overall craftsmanship, perhaps a combination of all of these? You know, how much of the costume has to be made by the individual wearing it for it to qualify, right? Lots of cosplay competitions have sort of a 70% rule. If you've made 70% of it, it's okay for you to bought little pieces, right? Like your wig or your shoes or something like that, because this stops someone competing in a costume that they've bought, let's say. And speaking of this kind of 70%, I did a lot of really prestigious cosplay competitions, which I'm not saying is what you're trying to be, but it's just a little bit of advice. Actually require competitors to submit a lookbook or a build book, which is basically a book that documents their making process, kind of proof that they made it, as opposed to like getting someone else to make it for them. Have you also considered things like categories, which might actually make the judging process easier, because it's incredibly difficult to judge, say, a Phantom of the Opera costume against a Six the Musical costume, when fundamentally they're both brilliant costumes but require completely different skills. Because it's so unclear of what judging criteria were in place, the overall competition just becomes a best dressed competition. And I feel like factors such as age definitely had a big sway in some of the decisions made. And like, if that's how MusicalCon wants to run their cosplay competition, that's so fine. But just make the audience aware of it and make the competitors aware of it, because cosplayers take their shit seriously. It's not just fun games and dress ups to them. It's serious. So a little bit more transparency on the cosplay competition would be brilliant. But I'm talking quickly now because I'm aware I have been rambling and grumbling for quite some time and y'all are probably getting bored. So I think it's time we just about wrap this video up. Hopefully I've been able to illustrate that whilst MusicalCon as an event definitely has promise, there are still glaring issues that haven't been worked out, which means it's far from the great event that it could be. Did I have fun at MusicalCon? Yes. Would I still be saying I had fun if I paid for it? No. The highlights of this event were the interactions I had with my fellow theatre fans, which realistically isn't necessarily something I think MusicalCon itself can take credit for, and it's more kind of like a byproduct of the convention being a space that we all congregate, kind of like West End Live, and that's free. I think my 2022 statement still to some degree applies here. I was there for free, so of course I had a decent time. I lost nothing in being there. I had no real skin in the game, shall we say. I hadn't invested any of my money, my hard-earned money, into the event. But if I had paid full price for the VIP ticket I was taking advantage of, I feel like it's pretty fair to say that I would have been right royally pissed off with what I got as a product versus what I feel like I had paid for. For the bare minimum of £60, I definitely think there is like better stagey things you could be doing with a weekend in London. You could get tickets to a show, you could go to the V&A and see their theatre exhibit. Heck, you could book a backstage tour at the theatre. You could get so much more bang for your buck in London, still doing stagey stuff than I think MusicalCon is ready to compete with. But there you have it. That was my full long list of thoughts and feelings about MusicalCon. Like I said, I don't want to call it a review because this wasn't a review necessarily. It was just me talking to my camera for what feels like 3 hours. I hope you enjoyed it. And if anyone on the MusicalCon team watched this, I sincerely hope you took notes, because I do think this event has a lot of promise and I do believe in it. I just think in its current form, at its current price, it's not quite what it should be. And so hopefully with a few improvements, we can get there, because I don't want to see this event go away. I want it to continue to grow and offer new and exciting things. You just need to listen to feedback. But if you attended MusicalCon either this weekend or in the past, I want to know about your experiences down in the comments. Tell me what you thought. Tell me what you liked. Tell me what you didn't like. Tell me all about it and we can have a little chat, because I know my experience isn't going to be a universal one. Remember to hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe for more of my theatrical content here on YouTube. And until next time, my lovelies, remember to stay stagey. I'll see you in the next one. Bye!